Look, chances are you're tuning into this explainer today because you're dealing with a really profound sense of emptiness. You might be sitting there right now, endlessly scrolling on your phone, desperately trying to distract yourself. But underneath all of that, there's just this heavy, lingering boredom. Well, you're absolutely not alone in feeling this way. The source material we're unpacking today actually completely flips how we look at this modern crisis. It offers a really powerful step-by-step breakdown of what it calls spiritual stagnation. So let's dive into the core of this. Why exactly do you feel so empty? The text gets straight to a pretty uncomfortable truth. It tells us this isn't just your regular, run-of-the-mill boredom. This is literal spiritual starvation. See, the argument here is that in our crazy, fast-paced modern lives, we've kind of forgotten our fundamental reality. We walk around acting like we're the absolute center of the universe, instead of recognizing our true place as servants of Allah. The source makes this really simple, undeniable parallel. If you went a whole week without food or water, your physical body would just shut down, right? Well, the exact same rule applies to the soul. Go weeks without spiritual nourishment, and the source warns that your soul simply begins to wither, leaving you walking through a life that has no actual life left in it. And you know what our absolute favorite escape route is from all this emptiness? Daydreaming. Honestly, we all do it. You lay your head on the pillow and just start imagining endless wealth, sky-high status, total luxury. But here's the massive trap the source identifies. Daydreaming gives your brain this totally fake, temporary hit of dopamine. Your mind gets completely hooked on this imaginary excitement. So what happens when you wake up and actually have to face a normal Tuesday? Reality feels incredibly dull and bitter by comparison. Because you've been feeding your brain this imaginary high, the real gritty effort you actually need to put in, to study, to work, to build a real life, suddenly feels completely impossible. The advice here? We have to stop these grand, impossible daydreams and only visualize the actual gradual steps we can realistically achieve. To help us pull ourselves out of this rut, our source material actually lays out a really structured 5-part journey. We're going to cover, number 1, the root of your boredom, 2, the dangerous myth of passion, 3, reclaiming your daily routine, 4, strengthening body and bonds, and 5, the power of consistent action. So let's start right at the foundation. Part 1. The root of your boredom, spiritual starvation, and daydreaming. As the text establishes, when your soul is completely starved, you literally lose the willpower to stay on the right path. That negligence is exactly what allows laziness to take root. So, actively prioritizing your spiritual health, that's really the only way out of this trap. Moving into part 2, the dangerous myth of passion, action over emotion. This part of the text totally tears down one of the most destructive ideas modern society feeds us. It's this toxic belief that you somehow need to feel a deep, burning passion before you can take any meaningful action. Seriously, if you only work when your mood is absolutely perfect, when you're feeling incredibly passionate, the source argues you are literally guaranteeing your own failure. Just think about how the real world actually functions. If every single person with a job or a responsibility waited for a magical burst of passion to get moving, society would just collapse. Think about it. You wouldn't find a teacher in their classroom, a grocer on the street, or a doctor in the hospital. The text is urging us to force ourselves through the necessary tasks even when we're bored out of our minds, because that is exactly how real success is built. The internet today is just flooded with this fake positivity, right? All those videos telling you to never give up and shock them with your success. The source material actually points out that these videos are part of the problem. They're just selling another fake reality, exactly like daydreaming. True discipline looks radically different. When a person leaves a warm, comfortable bed in the dead of night and splashes freezing cold water on their face for the Fajr prayer, they are acting on pure duty, not some fleeting temporary motivation. They do it because they know the ultimate benefit, completely bypassing the need to wait around to feel motivated. So, with that myth of passion officially shattered, we move to part 3, reclaiming your daily routine, structuring your life. The text outlines a total restructure of how we live our day-to-day lives in order to actually cure this stagnation. The source gives us this incredible 7-step ladder to climb out of boredom. It includes centering your day around prayer, having a daily Quran and wird practice, seeking Islamic knowledge, finding true relaxation, prioritizing social connection, getting physical exercise, and keeping up with daily Adhkar. It's this really comprehensive mix of spiritual, mental, and physical habits that are designed to completely shift the axis of your entire day. I want you to really notice the difference in scheduling that the text proposes here. If you ask your average person on the street when their day ends, they're probably going to say midnight, right? The modern consumer schedule is built entirely around working and consuming, which basically turns people into machines. But for a Muslim, the day naturally shifts with the sun.
It resets around Maghrib. The source argues that when you take those 5 daily prayers and make them the actual center of your schedule, something amazing happens internally. You stop feeling like a mindless, consuming machine, and your life actually begins to feel like a meaningful journey with a continuous, unbreakable connection to Allah.
Because look, there are going to be moments when the burdens of this world feel as heavy as literal mountains sitting right on your chest. You feel totally broken, totally exhausted. But then, the adhan calls. And as the source so beautifully explains, it's as if Allah is telling you to just stop for a moment. You are not a machine. Put those impossibly heavy worldly worries down on the ground and just return to Him. The text essentially frames prayer as this divine reset button built directly into your day, purely to save you from burning out. Now, right alongside prayer, the text highlights how absolutely necessary it is to maintain a daily portion of the Quran, a wird, and to actively seek out Islamic knowledge. The source points out that the single greatest danger to the community right now is just pure ignorance. It notes that there are these incredibly well-funded, concerted efforts out there designed specifically to distance people from their faith. So according to the text, consistent daily education in your religion, that's really the only way to build an impenetrable inner fortress around your own mind and around your family. And that brings us to the concept of true relaxation. You know the drill. We come home totally exhausted, collapse onto the couch, and just start endlessly scrolling through short videos, convincing ourselves that we're resting. But the text points out that staring at a glowing screen, consuming this rapid-fire content, actually keeps your brain locked in a constant state of stress. True relaxation, according to the source, means engaging in halal, constructive rest that actually rejuvenates your mind. It shouldn't destroy what you've spent the whole day trying to build. So the advice here is clear. Put the phone down. Go for a walk, learn a new sport, spend real time playing with your family, or go plant a garden. It's a great reminder to stop narrowing this huge, beautiful world down to a tiny, glowing rectangle.
All right, moving on to part 4, strengthening body and bonds, the physical and social revival. Here, the source really emphasizes that faith isn't just some isolated internal experience. It actually requires us to physically and socially engage with the real world around us. And the data the text brings up on social interaction is honestly shocking. Back in 2004, the average person spent at least 60 minutes a day interacting face-to-face with friends. Fast forward to 2020, that number plummeted to just 20 minutes. That is a massive 64% drop. The source argues pretty strongly that just having high activity on social media definitely doesn't make you a social person. In fact, it warns that it might actually be making you psychologically unwell. Instead, the text advises us to secure genuine, face-to-face, real-world connection with family, siblings, or neighbors every single day. And just as our social bonds require real maintenance, so does our physical body. Drawing on the immense physical strength of the great companions of the Prophet, the source notes that, hey, you don't need some super fancy gym membership or complicated workout philosophy to be physically capable. You really just need to move the body you were given. The text frames maintaining a baseline of physical capability not just as some fun hobby, but as a fundamental duty. The argument is simple. Your body has a right over you. The final part of this daily routine is the morning and evening Adhkar, the daily remembrances. Look, we all interact with people who might harbor some envy, or honestly, we just deal with the heavy fatigue of daily life. The text frames these Adhkar as a literal protective shield against all of that. But beyond just protection, they carry an unimaginable reward. The source highlights the Sayyid al-Istighfar, which is the absolute master of seeking forgiveness. The text notes that if it's recited with absolute certainty, passing away that day or night literally guarantees paradise. I mean, that is just the incredible, unmatched power of one single daily remembrance. Which finally brings us to part 5, the power of consistent action, the ultimate climax. This is where the source brings the whole explainer together, delivering the absolute most important takeaway for curing the spiritual stagnation. The number one rule for success, as highlighted by our source, is consistency. Listen, the boredom, the emptiness, those are just symptoms. They're just red lights on your dashboard showing you that your soul needs care. But here is exactly where people fail. They hear all this information, they get super hyped and highly motivated, and they decide they're going to implement all 7 steps perfectly by tomorrow morning. They try to read the entire Quran, work out for 3 hours, completely overhaul their whole life overnight, and a week later, they completely burn out and quit. The source emphatically reminds us that Allah loves actions that are consistent and permanent, even if they are very, very small. So the source leaves us with a truly critical question to ponder. What is the one small, unbreakable habit you will commit to starting today? Rather than relying on some fleeting passion or a temporary manic burst of motivation, the text challenges us right now to choose just one small duty. Maybe it's just praying right on time. Maybe it's reading exactly 5 minutes of the Quran, or just taking a short mindful walk. Pick one and execute it perfectly every single day. Because that quiet, consistent action, that is the true spiritual cure for boredom. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer today, and I really hope this analysis of the source material helps you take that first step in building a life full of genuine, lasting purpose.